obviously today is a day that's just all about motorcycle riding, and there won't be any photography unless I'm just overcome by my own vanity and I need to take a selfie. Alrighty. So this has probably been the most difficult video I've recorded to date, to the point where I just now reformatted the card and started over. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're a returning subscriber, if you're new to the channel, my name is Tony Hograve and I am a landscape photographer, primarily a landscape photographer, but I do all sorts of photography, and I do so for the mental health benefits that I get that helps me treat my PTSD, which is what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted not about PTSD specifically, but about the mental health benefits of photography, specifically self-portraiture. That intro that you just watched, I filmed 3 weeks ago. I've been threatening to make this video for several months. I think I first mentioned it on this channel way back in December. It's currently 5 in the afternoon. I've been sat in this chair since noon trying to record this video, and it has been a bit of a bear just because of the emotional baggage that keeps coming out of me. I don't script my videos. I might make a little note card with a couple of ideas, but it's typically stream of consciousness. And for something like this, that stream of consciousness just ends up being word vomit, and I end up running around in different circles, and it just becomes not what I'm setting out to do. I'm trying to make a point. See, what I'm talking about, talking in circles, I'm already doing it. So just to give you a little bit of background for those that are new to the channel, and even some of y'all that have actually been watching me for a bit, I'm a United States Marine. I am medically retired. I'm a combat veteran who served tours in both Somalia and Iraq. The Marine Corps put me out to pasture in 2003. I won't go into the details or any sordid stories of what happened to me overseas. Just know that I brought home more baggage than I bargained for. I found photography fairly early on after I left the Marine Corps. I was out of the Corps in 2003. I took my first photography class in 2005 or 2006. I think it was 2006. And the benefits didn't become apparent to me, but in retrospect, the benefits were there almost immediately. I was able to use photography as sort of a bleeder valve on a pressure cooker. You know, when things were getting tough, I could bury myself in photography, and it really kept me moving along. I was undiagnosed for over a decade after I got out of the Marine Corps, so I was completely unmanaged. Let me just say that, you know, photography wasn't the cure, but even today I still use photography as a source of zen. You know, photography and motorcycling are the two things that I use to manage my mental health. That and the tremendous amount of love and support that I get from my wife and children. But again, I'm starting to wander off onto trails I don't intend. But I wanted to show some examples of some of the self-portraiture that I've done in the past and walk you through not necessarily the process of creating them, but the emotions that I was dealing with. And the first one I want to talk about is this one right here. It's a triptych that I made in college. It was actually my very first foray into self-portraiture. While taking these pictures, and again at that point I didn't even know what PTSD was, and I was just an unmanaged monster at the time. The biggest thing about self-portraiture is that, or photography in general, is when you're having a hard time getting words to come out of your mouth, which is a big issue that I'm having just making this video, is you can use photography to say things or express things that you can't get out verbally. And sometimes you can do it in a way more poignant fashion than to just blurt this shit out. So this triptych here, for example, the issues that I was dealing with were, feeling forgotten after being put out of the Marine Corps, issues with survivor's guilt, and really just feeling like I had been cast aside by the military because I was halfway through a career when I was injured. And again, I apologize for not having digital copies of this. This was shot with an 8x10 film camera. The first image, and the reason why I did it with the 8x10 was because I could tilt and shift the lens. And in that first image, everything in the image is in tack sharp focus except for me. My uniform, my squad, all of the trappings of the military, even my awards on the bookshelf in the background, they're all in very sharp relief with the exception of myself. I really felt after I had gotten put out to pasture, I really felt forgotten. I felt, I had no mission. And that was one of the biggest things that I struggled with. The center image of this triptych, everything is in sharp focus. I think I shot this at f/16 in my living room. But you can see on the table, there's a photograph of my squad. My uniform is hanging in the background, and also on the table is a bottle of vodka, good vodka, that's Grey Goose vodka, and my hand is on my pistol. And I'm staring at the photograph of my squad. And the intent there was to reflect the huge issues I dealt with regarding survivor's guilt. None of them came home. Why did I get to? What made me so damn special? And the last image, again using the tilt shift, I tilted and shifted. The only thing in this photograph that is in sharp focus is my uniform in the background. And I had even taken a knife to the negative and scratched out myself, my own face. I scratched my face out of the negative and X'd out the photograph of my squad. So the only thing in this photograph that is undamaged and sharp is my uniform. Because, again, after having been put out of the military, I really, it was more than just feeling forgotten. I had no support structure at that time. I was living by myself in this tiny studio apartment. My family would have probably been there had I spoken up, but I was simply unable to. I didn't even understand what was going on with myself, but I really felt like I was absolutely alone in the world. And that's, hence the title and the word written across my forehead, orphan. This one I actually submitted to the West Michigan Art Show in Kalamazoo in 2007, I think it was, 2007, 2008, and I ended up taking third place, so, yay me. But in creating all of these images, I was forcing myself, and I didn't even realize at the time, I was forcing myself to feel all of those emotions that I had been tamping down and ignoring. And I had to show these images to my classmates. This was a college assignment. I don't remember, honestly, how the critique went. I don't remember what grade I got on it. but I do remember being absolutely terrified to share these images with my classmates, but also at the same time needing to show those images to my classmates because I really felt isolated. I really felt isolated in the world, and I felt like I was pitied by my classmates. And I just really wanted them to understand what was in my head, even though I actually couldn't say it. I never discussed any of that stuff with any of my classmates. These people were my only social outlet for 4 solid years. Those are the only people that I ever talked to were my classmates and my professors. I just did not, for the most part, I isolated in my own apartment. But again, here I go, running off on tangents. But getting to the other side of that assignment, and once all those photos were in the bag, it was like flushing the radiator in a car. I had pushed out all of those emotions. I dealt with it. I flushed it out. I got rid of, everything that I was holding on to was suddenly outside of me. They were all out there, and everything inside felt new. It didn't last long because that was really the only thing I was doing to manage myself, and I didn't even realize I was managing myself because I didn't realize there was anything to manage. But anyway, that was the very first foray into self-portraiture, and I did it a few more times in college, not intentionally, but rather I was a portrait photographer, and if I didn't have a model to photograph for an assignment, I would photograph myself. And I'll show you just a couple more images that I did in college. This assignment dealt with composite images, compositing multiple photographs into one. And back in 2008, that was a labor-intensive thing. It wasn't as easy as it is today, where it's just a matter of a few clicks here and there and 30 seconds, and voila, you've got a composite image. Back then, it took a minute, and that was actually something that after this assignment was something that I marketed to my clients. Hey, I can do this thing. And campy and cheesy, and anyway, I digress. And I'll throw these images up, but before I do, let me just say that some of them might be a little jarring. So if you deal with any mental health issues, specifically if you deal with post-traumatic stress disorder or suicidal ideation, the next images might be a little tough to handle. But I'll go ahead and put that first one up now. This image here, there's 3 self-portraits put into one. You see, myself tied to this chair, and myself pointing a weapon at my own head, and myself back in the corner with a camera photographing the entire scene. Again, I was dealing with those sometimes suicidal thoughts, and it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to die. I just didn't want to live the way I was living. I wanted to live better, and then sometimes I just really felt like there was no way to do that. And myself in the corner with a camera photographing the entire scene was really to say that more often than not, I didn't feel like I was in control of my own life. I was really just an observer. And this next image dealt with, and I want to say it dealt with because I wasn't even consciously aware of it. There's issues of hypervigilance here, where I'm standing on my own front porch guarding my house with a rifle, but I'm also there about to attack myself. So, and I'm not sure if that really coalesces well or brings that hypervigilance across, honestly, because I'm looking at that hypervigilance in retrospect. I don't think at that moment I was even thinking about hypervigilance. And this third one here is a photograph of myself panhandling from myself, and myself denying myself any help. I'm not sure if that speaks for itself, but I knew I needed help, but I sure as hell wasn't going to do anything about it. And there's one more that I did in college, and this one's worth talking about, because this one wasn't dealing with my own issues. This points out the fact that you can use self-portraiture not just to emotionally vomit your own shit, but to speak on issues, to say something about the world. This photograph, this diptych, there's a photograph of myself in uniform, which, by the way, was the second to the last time I ever had my uniform on, because this photograph was taken 5 years after I got out of the Marine Corps, and by then it fit like a sausage casing. Anyway, the other photograph with me sitting in an alley up against this wall, I shot that first, and then shaved my face to make myself look like I belonged in uniform, and then did the photo on the left. I did that in the studio. What I'm trying to say here is I'm trying to raise awareness on the issue of veteran homelessness. Of the American population, only 6% are veterans, yet 1/3 of the homeless population are veterans. That is a statistic that is absolutely worth discussing. You know, the person on the left in that diptych never imagined that he would be the person on the right. So yes, you can use self-portraiture to say things about yourself, to have that emotional purge, but you can also use it to speak on things that are important to you, and do so in a more poignant fashion than just gossiping over the water cooler at work. But even getting beyond self-portraiture, photography in general can be a very zen activity. It can be social, or it can be done alone. I myself am a man who absolutely revels in his solitude, and I say that as a married father of 4 with 3 children still living at home. Excuse me. My favorite thing in the world is a quiet house, or to be afield with my camera with no other human around for miles, and just enjoy the quiet, and to be able to focus on the activity of creating with my camera. It absolutely is. It's both an emotional purge and a very zen thing. And the biggest thing, I don't want to say if it's the biggest thing, but it's one of the big things, is without those things, without the things that I love in my life, I love motorcycling, I love photography. If I didn't have those 2 things, my tendency is to self-isolate, is to retreat within myself, and if I'm able to engage in those 2 things, the motorcycling thing, I'm in a motorcycle club, so it's a very social endeavor. I can go and do those things, and I can be among people who are very much like me, that understand me. And I can do that same thing with photography, especially with photography, because photographers, especially landscape photographers, they all tend to be a very similar type of nerd, so it's a great thing to be able to hang out with people who think very much the same way you do. And the other side of it, it's something that you can get away and you can do by yourself, and just have those zen moments. But without those 2 things, my tendency is to absolutely self-isolate. And if I turn into myself for too long, nothing good happens after that. So I need photography. I absolutely need photography. I need to do this. to live a good life and to simply survive. So, but yeah, I'm really starting to wander off and run off on tangents. I will thank you, first of all, for sticking around through the end of this, and I hope you found some benefit in this video. And I will actually leave you with a little footage of my most recent foray into self-portraiture, where I was really struggling with those survivor's guilt issues, and this photograph is one that I'm probably the most proud of. But yeah, this was a difficult video to make. I'm glad I finally did it. I'm glad I've got it off my chest, and I thank you for sticking around, and I hope you enjoy this last photograph.